This presentation is about prison overcrowding and has many different layers to it. First, we will talk about the current process as it works today, prison operations, goals, and things like that. Next, we will go over the issues that have brought about the need for improvement and change, why prison overcrowding is creating problems, how it makes the desired outcomes less effective. Next, we will talk about new and improved models or systems and recommendations, things that we can do instead of prisons, ways that we can change systems that are creating overcrowding, and things of that nature. And then we will move on to the projected benefits of implementing these recommendations, which will then be followed by immediate and long-term outcomes and feasibility, and last but not least, how the stakeholders' role is critical in the planning and implementation process. Prison overcrowding affects many people. As noted, currently the United States prison system serves 1.8 million people. The Federal Bureau of Prisons has put out a report about the current motives of prison systems. They mentioned that their current motive is to protect society by housing offenders in safe, humane, cost-efficient, and appropriately secure institutions. They offer life skills and work skills that assist offenders in becoming law-abiding citizens to have a successful release back into the community. As mentioned by Harding, the United States is incarcerating people at a rate of 90 seconds. That leads to prison overcapacity all over the nation. This contributes to the inefficiency of the goals of prisons. Prison overcrowding has created issues that have brought about the need for improvement and change. As written by researchers Glasner and Nakamura, when prisons are overcrowded, there is more often deprivation of rights. This creates an us versus them mentality for prisoners as they run into losses of freedom, privacy, and autonomy. When prisoners have this mentality, they are more likely to act out and show opposition to authority. We also see an article by Starr and Rahavi. These authors research how mandatory sentencing creates little to no discretion for prosecutors and judges, which also makes it so that they are unable to have consideration for groups who are predisposed to possibilities of committing crimes. Last but not least, an article by Gates shows how prosecutors have the power to stack charges, and stacking charges makes people in an offender position more likely to plead guilty and more likely to be sentenced to prison. Recommendations for new and improved models or systems related to prison overcrowding are as follows. First of all, allowing for more individualized approaches to verdicts would give prosecutors more discretion when they apply justice. This ties into the idea by Garrett and Bird that prosecutors having a larger variety of options for justice could help them alter the perception that prison is the only solution. Additionally, in an article by Hugh and others, we see that providing preventative or follow-up services for people susceptible to using criminal behavior for meeting their needs, or have mental illnesses that may make them more likely to show types of impulsive or antisocial behavior, would be a step in the right direction for decreasing prison crowding due to less prison sentences overall. There are benefits that can be projected based upon the implementation of the recommendations provided. One benefit is decreased payouts in instances of Eighth Amendment breaches. Prison overcrowding complaints generally file under cruel and unusual punishment due to the deprivation of rights previously mentioned. This would be less likely to happen if prison populations were at or below capacity. Additionally, Livingston writes about a county in Philadelphia where $5.1 million was saved in just 1 year due to implementation of electronic monitoring as an alternative to prison. Also, when numbers are down in prison populations, there is an increased ability to focus on rehabilitation. This can reduce recidivism and slow down the streamline to prisons. There are immediate and long-term outcomes to reducing prison populations and not running over capacity. There are also feasibility barriers that need to be considered. One of the long-term outcomes of the implementation is reducing largely unemployable ex-inmates. If we are sending less people to prison, then more people are able to remain in their communities and not have to worry about going back to employment due to possible denying of employment subjective upon findings of prior convictions. Additionally, a short-term outcome would be that prisons with low populations could have more time to provide services to inmates. The feasibility of this is questionable, however, as there may be limited or unknown reliability of access to mental health providers. To conclude, we will discuss how the stakeholders' role is critical in the planning and implementation process. Prosecutors are a stakeholder in the prison system. Therefore, if prosecutors and judges were less bound by mandatory sentencing guidelines, there would be an opportunity for discretion and individualized decision-making where alternative justice methods could be utilized, which would also decrease the flow into prison systems. Finally, legislators are stakeholders in the criminal justice system, and we have seen one example of the critical role they have in policy making from Livingston. We see that there is an interest to the state as money can be saved since they were able to stop a $40 million prison building project in Philadelphia and allow for an electronic monitoring system which allowed for release, contributing to a decrease in overcrowding and offenders who were still able to be active in their communities and families.